Hi guys, welcome back for another edition of the Hot in Vegas TV Sportsbook Insider. This week we're looking at Fight Night 66 featuring Frankie Edgar and Uriah Faber. Typically, as you know, if you've watched the show before, we don't like to go more than maybe 2 fights on a parlay. On this show, we're going to go ahead and break down what we think is a pretty good 3-fight parlay based on the 2 main events, or the main event, the co-main event, and then one of the lower level fights on there as well. First off, we're going to go ahead and take Frankie Edgar. He's at minus 400 in his fight with Uriah Faber. Really don't see a way for him to lose this fight. That's always a dangerous thing to say, especially in mixed martial arts, and especially when you're talking about a guy who's as veteran as Uriah Faber is. But when you break down, you look at these two guys, when you comparatively speaking, don't see Uriah being able to outbox him over the course of the entire fight. Certainly don't see him taking Frankie down and holding him down and beating him up ground and pound style. Certainly don't see him submitting him. So the only way we can really see Uriah winning this fight is maybe by catching him on the button at one point. Like I said, every fighter, no matter who he is or how many fights he's had, everybody has that button. So if Uriah can catch him on the button and knock him out, that's one way to win. Just don't see that happening. I think Frankie probably keeps his fight upright the majority of the fight, outboxes him, cracks, circles out, maybe sprinkles in or takes down every once in a while just to keep Uriah, keep him honest. But other than that, I think Frankie is too big a pro. We've seen him struggle with some of the bigger fighters in the past, guys that maybe are a little bigger, a little longer, a little stronger than Frankie is. Uriah's actually coming up to 145 for this fight after fighting a few fights at 135. So when you look at guys that are pretty close in terms of size, skill level, I think Frankie is certainly a little more skilled, certainly in the boxing. And Uriah is obviously a very, very good wrestler, as he's shown his entire career. But when you talk about Frankie, you're talking about a guy that's been able to mix his striking and his MMA wrestling, and very, very well, in my opinion, maybe one of the top 1 or 2 guys that doesn't currently hold a belt right now. So we're going to go ahead and take Frankie Edgar at minus 400, and we're going to go to parlay that with Edgar Mousasi. He's fighting Costas Philippou. Philippou's coming off an injury, was to fight Uriah Hall a couple cards ago. That ended up not happening for whatever reason. I guess he was injured, but Costas pretty one-dimensional. Looks like a fighter, big arms, big legs, looks like a guy who should be a destroyer, but Costas kind of has come back to earth a little bit after a nice little win streak. I said good hands, not a great striker, not a dynamic striker. Mousasi, I think, will probably be able to walk him down, get him against the fence at some point, eventually take him down and tap him out, or he might just out-kickbox him for 3 rounds. So not a great matchup, certainly, for Costas Philippou. And in the game of MMA, it's all about matchups. It's all about what tools you bring to the table, what the other guy can bring to the table as well. And this is just a bad matchup for Edgar. So he's minus 550. Obviously, you're paying a little price. If you want Mousasi, you're not gonna find anywhere much better than maybe minus 500. So instead of minus 550, we're certainly not going out on a limb by picking him to beat Costas Philippou. That's kind of the prevailing opinion around Las Vegas. But that's a pretty chunky number, but I think it's probably good. That's what we're going to put in as part of the parlay. I don't think you want to necessarily take that as a single fight. Laying $550 to make $100, it didn't seem like a great value right there. And everybody, like we said, like we talked about, everybody's got a button. And Mousasi has a button as well, and Philippou, if you found the button, then you're out $550. So we're going to go ahead and make that as part of the parlay. So we're going to take Frankie at minus 400. We're going to take Edgar Mousasi at minus 50. The third fight here, some people might not necessarily agree with the strategy here, but we're going to take Luke Barnett. He's a big Englishman, 6'6", long fighter. Not that dynamic, doesn't have great hands, is actually coming off a two-fight losing streak, but the reason we're going to take him against Mark Munoz, Barnett's minus 160, has nothing to do with the matchup stylistically, has nothing to do with Barnett's skill set or Munoz's skill set or anything like that at all. Like we talked about in the past, we're going to base this purely on fighter arc, and right now Mark Munoz does not have a very good looking fighter arc right now. He's 0-3 in his last 3 fights. They've all been 3-3. He's been stopped in the first round all the last 3 fights. But most importantly, he's said after this fight, he plans on retiring. It's just you just kind of wonder about a guy's mindset. If he knows he's going to be retiring for a fight, you wonder how much dog he's got left in him. You don't wonder if he's got enough dog left to finish up that takedown. Once he pushes Barnett against the fence and they're grinding, they're fighting, he's fighting for the takedown, Barnett's fighting to stay up. You wonder if Munoz has enough left to finish up that takedown and eventually, ground and pound at a win. So we think Barnett, right in the middle of his MMA career, he certainly, there's a light at the end of his tunnel in terms of fighting. Like I said, his 2 losses were 2 split decision losses, so they're certainly excusable. He's got good skills. He was a longer guy. He's 6'6". That's a pretty long middleweight, obviously, but like I said, we're looking at the fact that Mark Munoz is probably going to be retiring after this fight. And like I said, that's not a great thing. Sometimes your camp does is go, you're not grinding out in your camp as you would when you're, looking at a belt or thinking that you've got a career. When you've got 3 or 4 fights left in this game, you just kind of wonder if that's kind of what he's looking at. So to summarize, we're looking at Frankie the answer. He's minus 400. We're going to go ahead and parlay him with Edgar Mousasi against Costas Philippou, who's minus 550. And we're going to go with Luke Barnett. Like I said, typically I'd like the wrestler against a long, not exactly a dynamic or great athlete Barnett, but we like the fact that he's right into his MMA career and still training hard. Mark Munoz obviously is eyeing towards the riding off into the sunset. He's got a bunch of kids. Just read recently he closed his gym, the Rain Training Center, so he can spend more time with his kids. And just wonder, how much dog he's got left in him to finish up those takedowns against the fence when Barnett doesn't want to go down and he's trying to, finish it off. So Barnett's at minus 160, and like I said, Mousasi minus 150. You're looking at Frank Edgar minus 400. Like I said, usually don't like to do 3-5 parlays, so like I said, anything can happen. We feel pretty good about these. Like I said, you have two heavy favorites and one guy who we really kind of like, kind of a dark horse with Luke Barnett. That's going to pay about $1.30 on your dollar. Certainly not looking to retire off this card or anything like that. Like I said, you're looking at about $1.30 when you run the numbers. Give or take 5 or 10 cents based on what house you're gambling at or what service you're using with your numbers. So Frankie at minus 400, Edgar Mousasi at minus 550, and Luke Barnett at minus 160. Like I said, if you bet $100, that's going to bring you back about $130. Which is not a terrible return, but like I said, we feel pretty confident about these 3 fights. Thanks for checking in. We'll see you next week.